Hello and welcome to this SRDR Plus training video. My name is Brian Smith. I'm the administrator of SRDR Plus. In this video, I will demonstrate how to build an extraction form in your SRDR Plus project. I will also cover the rules for using each extraction form section, including the design details, arm details, sample characteristics, outcomes, outcome details, risk of bias assessment, and results sections. So let's begin. First, we will log into SRDR Plus using our SRDR Plus username and password. Remember, after logging into SRDR Plus, you will automatically be forwarded to the My Projects page. On the My Projects page, either search for or navigate to your project. Then, under the title of the project, click on the Edit Extraction Form link. This will forward you to your project's extraction form builder page. However, if you have not yet created the extraction form for your project, I advise you to instead click the Key Questions link, like so. And then, on the Key Questions page of your project, ensure that you have at least one key question entered into your project. Once you are ready to begin creating your project extraction form, click on the Build Extraction Form button located on the right side of the page. This will forward you to your project's extraction form builder page. On this page, you are provided with all of the tools you'll need to create your project's SRDR Plus extraction form. The SRDR Plus extraction form is an online, collaborative, digital representation of what used to be paper extraction forms for extracting data from studies included in a systematic review. Each SRDR Plus project may have only one extraction form. Although the extraction form can be customized to display extraction questions specific to each key question, as I will describe in our next training video, focusing on adding questions to your extraction form. The standard SRDR Plus extraction form is organized by default into the design details, arm details, sample characteristics, outcomes, outcome details, risk of bias assessment, and results sections. The order in which these sections appear in your extraction form is intended to mirror the chronological order with which data is presented in a typical research article, starting with the study design section of the article, which is then followed by the study methods, Table 1 sample characteristics, results, and finally the discussion section. This extraction form is also meant to be flexible across study designs, and therefore may be configured for either a review of intervention/treatment effectiveness type studies, or a review of diagnostic accuracy type studies. Note, if you change the extraction form type to diagnostic accuracy, the list of sections will differ, as I will show you later in this video. The option for configuring the type of extraction form used in your project is included in the results section of the extraction form, which we will cover later in this video. Now let's start describing each section of the extraction form, starting with the design details section. This section of the extraction form, along with the risk of bias assessment section, is designed to include extraction form questions which are presented to the extractor at the study level, meaning they are asked only once per study extraction. It is recommended that questions about study design, setting, or any other question assessing the methodology of a study be included in this section. When building the arms section of your extraction form, you may suggest the titles of particular intervention/study arms and their associated descriptions that you feel are likely to appear within your list of included studies. This list of suggested arms will then be presented to your extractors during individual data extraction, giving them the option to use your pre-specified arm titles or to create their own. Incorporating pre-specified arm titles on your extraction form confers the following advantages to your data extraction workflow: reduce data entry time, reduce spelling errors, formatting errors and unwanted redundancy, and finally, reduce need for data cleaning. To add an arm title and description to the list of suggested arms, first enter the arm title into the field labeled Name. For the pre-specified suggested arms, you probably will not want to enter an arm description since these commonly vary across studies, but you may pre-specify the description in the field labeled Description. If needed, the extractor can later change the arm description for each extracted study. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'll add the arms High Blood Pressure Target and Low Blood Pressure Target, and I will leave the description blank for both. Some teams may prefer to add an instruction such as Define per study in the description, but this may necessitate later cleanup to remove leftover instructions in the export file. After completing the entry of each suggested arm, I simply click the Save button, like so. The arms, high blood pressure target and low blood pressure target, are now added to the list of suggested arms on the page, as you can see here. You can enter as many suggested arms as you wish, or none if you want the team to enter each on the fly. The arm details section of the extraction form, along with the sample characteristics section, is designed to include extraction form questions which may be presented to extractors at the arm level, meaning that these questions will be repeated for each arm defined by extractors in a particular study extraction. To disable this feature, at the top of the arm details section, uncheck the box next to display questions for each arm defined in the extraction, like so. Note, if you decide to disable this feature, the questions on this section will be asked only at the study level. It is recommended that specific questions related to the arm's interventions of a study be included in this section, such as dose, frequency, surgical details, and comments about the study arm. Typically, the data entered here will be derived from the article's method section. The sample characteristics section of the extraction form, by default, includes extraction form questions at the arm level, in addition to providing the option to also enter data for overall/total values across all groups in a study. To disable this option, at the top of the sample characteristics section, uncheck the box next to Include Total All Interventions Combined, like so. If you decide to keep this box unchecked, the questions on this section will be asked only at the arm level. It is recommended that specific questions related to characteristics of study participants, typically at baseline, be included in this section. Similar to the arms section, when building the outcomes section of your extraction form, you may suggest the type, domain, specific measurement, and time points of a particular outcome that you believe is likely to appear within your list of included studies. This list of suggested outcomes will then be presented to your extractors during individual data extraction, giving them the option to use your pre-specified outcomes, revise details of the pre-specified outcomes such as time points, or to create their own new outcomes. Note, the domain field of the outcome section is meant to capture information about the category of outcome, for example, kidney function, while the specific measurement field is meant to capture information about the specific outcome, for example, estimated glomerular filtration rate, GFR, measured GFR, or creatinine clearance. You may also choose to enter your specific outcome, GFR, as the domain and leave the specific measurement field blank. For the purposes of this demonstration, I will add the outcome, GFR. I'll first start by identifying this outcome from the drop-down menu as a continuous type outcome. Next, as we just discussed, I will enter the title of the outcome, leaving the specific measurement field blank. And I will leave the suggested time points field blank as well, since I expect this to vary from study to study. I then click the Save button, and now the continuous outcome, GFR, is added to the list of suggested outcomes. Similar to the arm details section, the outcome details section of the extraction form is designed to include extraction form questions which may be presented to extractors at the outcome level, meaning that these questions will be repeated for each outcome defined by extractors in a particular study extraction. To disable this feature, at the top of the outcome details section, uncheck the box next to display questions for each outcome defined in the extraction. Also, like with the arm details section, if you decide to disable this feature, the questions on this section will be asked only at the study level. Note, outcome measure results should not be included in this section if they were reported for multiple time points and/or subgroups. As well, if outcome measure results were reported for between or within arm comparisons, for example, p-value, relative risk, odds ratio, etc. Instead, extractors will enter that information on their own into the results section of the extraction form during individual data extraction. As alluded to earlier in this video, the risk of bias assessment section, like the design details section, includes extraction form questions that are presented to the extractor at the study level, meaning they are asked only once per study extraction. Unique to this section, clicking on the button Add Questions from a predefined list, located at the bottom right of the page, allows you to add risk of bias questions from a selection of standard risk of bias tools, assessing randomized studies, non-randomized studies, or diagnostic accuracy studies. For example, clicking on the Randomized Studies menu, we see that we can add questions from the Cochrane Risk of Bias 2.0 tool, among others. Alternatively, by clicking on the Add Question button at the bottom right of the Risk of Bias Assessment section, you can customize your own extraction form questions for this section. Unlike the other sections of the extraction form, the results section of the form is not built before individual data extraction. Rather, it is up to the extractor of each study extraction to select the study arms, the outcomes, and the measures besides the default measures, which should be included in this section, and to then fill in those fields with the appropriate study data. As mentioned previously in this video, in the results section of the extraction form builder, you may choose to switch the type of your extraction form from standard treatment effectiveness type extraction form to a diagnostic test type, or vice versa. If you are creating a diagnostic test form, remember to start here, since selecting this extraction form type will result in the replacement of the ARM and ARM details sections with diagnostic test and diagnostic test details, as well as the replacement of outcomes and outcome details with diagnoses and diagnosis details, respectively. Also note that if your overall project includes key questions on both standard interventions and diagnostic text questions, you will need to create separate SRDR plus projects for each. Similar to what I showed you earlier, in the diagnostic test section, you may suggest the titles and descriptions of specific index and reference tests to be used by your extractors during individual data extraction. In the diagnostic test details section, you may select to repeat each question for each index and reference test included in a study extraction and/or for total all diagnostic tests combined. In the Diagnoses section, you will be able to add a specific diagnosis title and description to the list of suggested diagnoses, and in the Diagnosis Details section, you will be able to repeat each question in the section for each diagnosis defined in the extraction, and/or for total all diagnoses combined. And with that, we have completed this video. In this video, we covered how to add an extraction form to your SRDR Plus project, and we reviewed the rules for using each extraction form section. In the next video, I will show you how to use the question builder to add different types of data fields to extraction form sections, as well as how to use data field dependencies to integrate skip logic into extraction form sections. If you have any questions about this video or about SRDR Plus, please feel free to email us at srdr@ahrq.hhs.gov, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you for watching this video. We'll see you on the next one. Have a great day.